Welcome to the Razors Inc. podcast with your host, Jonathan Farini. As we go to publish this week's podcast, Roman Catholic cardinals are sequestered at the Vatican as the conclave to elect a new pope commences. And while many are flocking to various streaming outlets for last year's Oscar-nominated film Conclave, there's another fascinating film about the papacy, deserving of a second or even first look. So pour yourself a drink, pull up a chair, and hear Jonathan's take on movies, television, and today, another film from that incredible year of 1968 that, given current events, feels quite relevant today. Here's your host, Jonathan Farini.
I'm recording this podcast after hearing news of the Pope's death. I'll share my observations about a 1968 MGM release titled The Shoes of the Fisherman, which I watched again for preparation of this podcast. To appreciate this film, one doesn't need to be Catholic or be religious. Having visited the Vatican, I marvel at the majesty of the institution, its constituency of nearly 1.4 billion people, and its traditions. 1968 was a very contentious time in world history. The assassination of Robert F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King, and protests against the Vietnam War. The Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union raged. It shouldn't be difficult to draw parallels between the political environment of 1968 and today, which makes the message of this fine film all the more salient. You won't hear this take anywhere else, but MGM released a film titled Ice Station Zebra, starring Rock Hudson the same year.
You are 300 feet below the surface of the North Atlantic. On board the American nuclear submarine, Tigerfish 3. Your destination, a secret outpost at the top of the world. Ice Station Zebra.
Take her up.
Your orders, get there before the Russians.
It's about an unlikely assemblage of characters on board a United States Navy nuclear submarine sent to the Arctic to retrieve a Soviet space capsule and avert a potential nuclear war. Yeah, it all works out. Keep this in mind as I discuss The Shoes of the Fisherman. During the height of the Cold War, Kirill Pavlovich Lakota, played by Anthony Quinn, a former archbishop of the Catholic Church within the Soviet Union, is unexpectedly set free after 20 years in a Siberian labor camp by his jailer, Pyotr Ilyich Kamenev, now the premier of the Soviet Union, played by Laurence Olivier. This act of goodwill is intended to establish a Russian sphere of influence in Rome and influence a new pope. More about this later. Anthony Quinn, born Manuel Antonio Rodolfo Quinn Hoaca, a Mexican-American kid from East Los Angeles and civil rights advocate, shines like he does in nearly 100 film and stage roles. He radiates the necessary compassion and humility we expect to see in a pope. See his filmography, watch his films, he never disappoints. He's a two-time Oscar winner for Best Supporting Actor in Viva Zapata and Lust for Life. Sir Laurence Olivier plays Kamenev.
Good evening, Premier.
I want to show you a world gone mad, in which we starve a great country into an atomic war. I'm sending you back into this world. We have made a deal for your freedom.
Olivier's portrayal sounds much like his character dentist Christian Zell inside the 1976 Marathon Man.
Is it safe?
Yes, it's safe. It's very safe. It's so safe you wouldn't believe it.
Is it safe?
See the irony? Christian Zell playing a Nazi with what I contend is a very similar accent. Lakota is sent to the Vatican and the Pope makes him a cardinal. Lakota is reluctant, begging to be given.
I beg your holiness to give me a simple mission where I can be with simple men.
But the Pope, played by John Gielgud, insists making Lakota a cardinal. The Pope dies and the papal conclave begins. We're now introduced to television newsman George Faber, played by David Janssen, fresh off of completing the Fugitive series.
The Pope is dead. The Camerlengo will announce it.
The master of ceremonies, the notaries, the doctors will consign him under signature into eternity. His ring will be defaced. The seals will be broken. The papal apartments will be locked and sealed. While the bells are still ringing, the pontifical body will be handed over to the embalmers, so that it may be a seemly object for the veneration of the faithful. They will place his body between white candles in the Sistine Chapel, while the noble guard maintains the death watch under Michelangelo's frescoes of the Last Judgment. On the third day, they will bury him, clothed in full pontificals, with a mitre on his head, a purple veil covering his face, and a red ermine blanket to warm him in the crypt.
Faber has an encyclopedic knowledge of the Vatican. We receive most of our instruction about the conclave from Faber in a nuanced manner, suggesting surgical precision without empathy. More about this to follow. Faber's marriage to Dr. Ruth Faber, played by Barbara Jefford, is failing because Faber is a player, with a young girlfriend named Chiara, played by Rosemary Dexter, in tow. The secreted election process of a new pope is aptly portrayed inside the film, and this viewer got the memo that politics plays an important part in selecting a pope. After 7 deadlocked ballots, Lakota is unexpectedly elected pope as a compromise candidate by the cardinals, impressed by his ideas and his humility. Lakota reluctantly accepts election and takes the name of Pope Kirill. The world is on the brink of nuclear war due to a Chinese-Soviet feud made worse by a famine caused by crop failures in China. A little history. Nixon didn't make contact with China until 1973. And aside from Hong Kong, which was a British colony on a long-term land lease from China, China wasn't the China you see today. In this viewer's opinion, it resembled a larger version of today's North Korea and was under the tutelage of Chairman Mao. Read about the political purges or ask Chinese people about life back then in China. This isn't a world history podcast, but some footnotes for younger listeners. Kirill isn't comfortable inside the confines of the Vatican and pines to be with regular people. He sneaks out of the Vatican dressed as a simple priest. By chance, he encounters Dr. Ruth Faber, who is attending to a dying patient who is Jewish. Kirill helps get her medicine from a pharmacist. He says a Catholic prayer over the dying man, upon which the man's friends say,
"He is not a Christian. We are mostly Jews here."
Oh. Shema Israel, Hashem Eloheinu, Hashem Ehad. Shema Israel, Hashem Eloheinu, Hashem Ehad. Baruch Shem Kevod Maluto Leolam Vaed.
Kirill then says a Jewish prayer along with the man's friends.
מתברר לבייק ושננתה לבייק ודיברת בם ושנתרב בדרך שוברה קומק שרתה מלאות על ידיך והיו לבדות בעמלק ורתתם ומזוזות אליך ואיש עריך.
Shema Israel, Hashem Eloheinu, Hashem Ehad.
He's comfortable now. Where did you learn Hebrew?
Oh, I was a biblical scholar when I was young.
That doesn't explain it, does it?
No, it doesn't. No, I worked with a rabbi in a camp in Siberia.
Back to George Faber's reporting style. My take is Jansen may be portraying a Jewish guy reporting about another historical event like it's just a job. If I were directing or writing, I'd insert a clip with Faber reporting from Israel about the Six-Day War in 1967. It would have been an interesting and deserved contrast, fleshing out the character of Faber beyond reporter playboy. A secondary plot in the film is the Pope's relationship with controversial theologian, philosopher, and scientist Father Telemon, played brilliantly by the Austrian actor Oskar Werner. See his filmography and films. I really felt for this character. I think you will too.
So your hearing is set for tomorrow, huh?
10:30. Did you have a chance to read my book?
Yes, I did.
Well, I'm not going to die from the truth.
I found very little of the Christian faith, as I know it, in your book. For 20 years, that faith alone kept me alive.
Go on.
I found it speculative, dangerous, and full of
heresy.
It challenges the faith. For instance, Jesus Christ speaks of the redemption of the soul. I find not one mention of the word soul in your writings.
But it's there, only under another name.
Why change the name if you're not afraid of it?
To express in modern terms reality and truth more clearly.
Father, if you truly believe that, why did you remain a priest?
Are you accusing me of dishonesty?
I'm not accusing you of anything. That is for you to answer. But are you sure you are honest with yourself?
I'm under a death sentence. I cannot afford to be otherwise.
Telemon's an intellectual priest with significant disagreements with the church, and he's become the target of cardinals who want to censor him, basically kicking him out of the church.
Talking about man, you called him a very special animal.
The animal who knows, and knows that he knows.
Exactly. Now, down in our museum is the skull of a prehistoric man. His skull is broken by a stone axe. He was obviously killed by one of his fellows.
Yes, I've seen it.
An act of violence, yes?
Yes.
An act of destruction, yes? Committed by a thinking and knowing creature?
Yes.
Is it the same act as the shooting of a man in a back alley in Paris?
Essentially, yes.
And that act, too, is a part of the design of God?
The design includes it.
You did not answer yes to that question. Why?
Because I see where you are leading me.
Exactly. We're leading you to the problem of good or evil, right or wrong in the Christian sense.
The killing of that Stone Age man by another man. Was it right or wrong?
I don't know.
I beg your pardon, Father. You don't know?
No, I don't. It might have been an act imposed upon him by the necessities of a time and place of which we know very little.
Imposed by the evolutionary plan?
Yes.
In other words, by God's plan?
Yes.
So God is the author of sin and evil. That's heresy, Father.
No, it is not heresy. The reality is this. For certain primitive tribes, murder was a religious act. For us, it is a crime. The growth from one attitude to another is evidence of a divine plan. Even today, too many Christians justify mass murder under the name of war. Tomorrow, please God, they will outlaw war too as a crime.
The Pope becomes Telemon's close personal friend, but must allow the censor. They remain friends, and Telemon becomes the Pope's most trusted advisor. Telemon dies from a neurological malady. Here's a huge plot twist, and my return back to Olivier's character, the Premier. There isn't any diplomatic solution to the unfolding conflict between China and Russia, and the story throws a Hail Mary pass, by having the Pope return to the Soviet Union dressed in civilian clothing to meet privately with Kamenev and Chinese Chairman Peng, played by Burt Kwok, who presents an angry, defiant chairman, but in this viewer's opinion is too young for the role. The Pope mediates a cessation of the conflict by offering to fund the purchase of food to feed the famine in China. Chairman Peng correctly asserts,
"Pay some of the price that we have to pay."
What do you expect him to pay? How?
When I came here today, I put my head on the executioner's block. When I go back across that border, it might well be chopped off. That's my risk. What is yours?
All of the foregoing is taking place before the papal coronation. In meeting with senior Vatican aides, Kirill advances his solution to the world conflict and is met with dissent by the cardinals. The Pope offers to resign then and there if his solution isn't supported by the Vatican, including selling all of the church's property, including precious art, real estate, and treasure, to underwrite the purchase of food to cure the famine. This brings the world a new chance at peace, and Kirill's decision is internationally acclaimed.
I pledge it now. All our money, all our holdings in land, buildings, and great works of art for the relief of our hungry brothers. And if to honor this pledge, the Church must strip itself down to poverty, so be it. I will not alter this pledge. I will not reduce it. And now, I beg the great of the world and the small of the world to share out of their abundance with those who have nothing.
I enjoyed this film, but I have a bone to pick with the writing. There's a major question unresolved about Olivier Kamenev's decision to release Kirill. Was he a master chess player, able to see the brilliance of Kirill and his rise inside the Vatican? The 1962 Manchurian Candidate is racing about my mind. It's just too coincidental with no explanation. Maybe we should just chalk it up to divine inspiration and be happy it all worked out. Yeah, I'll go along with that idea. This movie runs 162 minutes, but I think it will hold your attention. The budget was reportedly just shy of $6.7 million, but looks more expensive. The filmmakers used archival footage of crowds gathering outside the Vatican. The film was directed by Michael Joseph Anderson Sr. He was an English film and television director. His career spanned nearly 50 years. His most successful films include Logan's Run in 1976 and Around the World in 80 Days in 1956, which won the 1957 Academy Award for Best Picture. The Vatican gave no permission to film there, so places like the Sistine Chapel had to be recreated. George Davis and Edward Carfano were nominated for Best Art Direction. The set design in this film supports the nomination for Best Art Direction. See for yourself. Screenplay by John Patrick and James Kenaway, based upon The Shoes of the Fisherman, a novel by Morris West, which was a huge success, selling over 6 million copies. Alex North was a composer and nominated for an Oscar for Best Score. He was nominated for 15 Academy Awards throughout his career, making him the most nominated composer to have never won. He was awarded an honorary Academy Award in 1986, the first composer to receive it. Here's a sampling of his work. Streetcar Named Desire, Death of a Salesman, Spartacus, Cleopatra, The Agony and the Ecstasy. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and The Shoes of the Fisherman. 1968 was a competitive and wonderful time to see movies. See my podcast about 1968 in film. Some notable movies released included 2001: A Space Odyssey, Bullet, Lion in the Winter, Rosemary's Baby, Night of the Living Dead, Planet of the Apes, The Odd Couple, Once Upon a Time in the West, Where Eagles Dare, Hang 'em High, The Thomas Crown Affair, Funny Girl, and Charlie. See my podcast about the movie Charlie. A good bookend for this film is The Agony and the Ecstasy, released by 20th Century Fox in 1965, directed by Carol Reed and starring Charlton Heston as Michelangelo and Rex Harrison as Pope Julius II. The film deals with the conflicts of Michelangelo and Pope Julius II during the painting of the Sistine Chapel ceiling. It also features a soundtrack by prolific composers Alex North and Jerry Goldsmith, who also has a huge filmography. If your only interest in a story about the Vatican is watching a Professor Sleuth chasing down the Illuminati, this film isn't for you. Final thought as we await to see the election of the next pope. Wouldn't it be wonderful if this pope, like Quinn's Lakota, had the courage to lay it all on the line for a chance at world peace? For that matter, any politician, anybody. The underlying message inside the shoes of the fisherman is sacrifice for the greater good. Until I see you next time, please leave behind a soft footprint, and class is dismissed.
And in this producer's opinion, while David Jansen's role as the reporter felt a little clunky, kind of like the wrong puzzle piece forced in to fit into an empty space, Jansen's character's narrative of the proceedings from the Pope's funeral to the conclave should be watched by anyone with any interest in how the Vatican works. But as the conclave progresses, may the Vatican elect someone with the humility and the humanity of not only his predecessor, but also Father Kirill Lakota. You've been listening to the Razors Inc. podcast with Jonathan Farini. Be sure to check out Jonathan's collection of fiction at the Jonathan B. Farini Story Collection at jonathanfarini.com. Also, look for Jonathan's latest short story, The Line in the Lake, published in the most recent issue of the online magazine Mobius. You can find it at mobiusmagazine.com or drop an email to razorsincpodcast@gmail.com.